and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center video podcast. Today, our guest from New Jersey is Pavlo Gintov. He's a classical pianist, and he is a co-organizer of several Ukrainian protests against concerts run by Russian musicians. Welcome, Pavlo. And can you tell us, why did you protest against Russian music in the United States?
Hello, and thank you for having me. First of all, let me correct you a little bit. We did not protest against Russian music. We had protest against specific individuals who, in March of 2014, published an open letter to President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, supporting his invasion of Ukraine and annexation of Crimea. That letter was published on the website of the Ministry of Culture of Russian Federation and had a total of 511 signatures.
There were, as you said, there were Russian musicians and Russian culture like actors who have openly supported Russian aggression, and then they made their rallies worldwide, not for the war or for annexation, but just like for some cultural things. But you say that by doing that, they also whitewashed this Russian influence. So does it mean that Russia actually weaponizes everything, including culture?
Oh, yeah, of course, Russia does. Yeah, that's a long history of Russia, and before that, Soviet Union weaponizing culture and arts and the sports, and I mean, we're all very well aware of it. And of course, they're using it as a soft power. That's, there were articles in numerous newspapers about it, including the New York Times, about Russia's soft power, how they send their agents of the influence who pretend to be artists, let's say, or pretend to be some kind of ambassadors of goodwill to, so to speak, build bridges between nations. But then they actually come here to exactly what you said, whitewash actions of Putin and promote his policies and advocate for whatever his regime is doing inside of Russia or outside. So definitely, this is a part of a weapon from their side.
Like what I was absolutely shocked during these years, how the names like Gergiev, a famous conductor, who literally supported every single Putin's war, starting from Putin's invasion of Georgia in 2008, and Putin's action in Syria, and he still was respected in the West as a good artist. But this is the person who conducted his concert with the Russian troops in Russia-occupied Palmyra. And we know what Russians did there. We know that Russians supported Assad in like gassing people, in killing people, indiscriminately bombing. And then Gergiev plays his concert with the Russian soldiers, and then he's been welcomed in New York, wasn't he?
You're absolutely right. And even before that, you mentioned the invasion of Georgia in 2008, and Gergiev conducted the concert on the ruins of Russian-occupied Skhin Valley in Abkhazia, just basically hours after there was fighting there, and there were prisoners of war, Georgians, sitting next to it in cages. He was conducting that concert to celebrate the great victory. And even after that, for the West, for the world, the world was fine with that. Okay, it's his right to voice his opinion. That's how they usually say, right? That's his right to voice his opinion. So he did that in Georgia. He did that in Palmyra in Syria. He openly supported the annexation of Crimea, the invasion of Ukraine. He supported every single step, including other policies, anti-gay policies inside of Russia, and many, many other despicable things that led into that Russia that we have today, a fascist regime, right? And he still was welcomed everywhere until February of last year. So that was a little bit interesting to see how we protested against his appearances here for 8 years. We wrote letters to all the concert venues, to all the managers, to whoever we could write letters to, saying that, look, you know what this person has done. How can you welcome him here? And we always got same response, that we value him as an artist, and his views have nothing to do with it. Politics are not connected to the arts, and blah, blah, blah. And every time that was the same response. And then suddenly when the full-scale invasion began on February 24 of last year, suddenly everyone woke up and said, oh, we cannot have anything to do with these despicable people anymore. And all these people from that list that I'm talking about all of a sudden became personas non grata everywhere in the civilized world. So that was a very, very sudden shift. And if you know, for 8 years, they felt like some kind of crazy minority who were very surprised that the world is embracing these people and applauding to them and shaking their hands. And suddenly that became a sort of mainstream position of everyone. And now no one wants to deal with them anymore. So very strange situation.
Well, that is amazing. But before we go further and talk about this change and if this change is sustainable, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like, to share, to comment. And if you subscribe, you will get informed as the first person about our new interviews, and you don't want to miss these interviews. So Pavlo, tell us, back like to Gergiev and other persons, we have like world level stars who clearly supported Putin wars, like Anna Netrebko. We know Anna Netrebko's famous singer, a citizen of Austria, who supported the annexation of some territories in Ukraine, so-called Novorossiya, Luhansk, Donetsk regions. She visited these regions. She's been pictured with the Russia-installed warlords in the regions. She was waving the flag of these marionette institutions. And can you explain me, how does it work? Normally, a person who has openly been involved in racist statements, in statements against minorities, doesn't get a stage in the West. And now Anna Netrebko was waving a flag under which people have been kidnapped, raped, tortured, of the entity which openly promoted racism, anti-Westernism. How could it be real?
You know, that's an excellent question that I keep asking, and I have no answer to this. Anna Netrebko, very famous opera diva, the famous soprano, she is still welcome on the world's best concert stage even today, which is really, like she was not on that list that I mentioned of 511 people who supported the annexation of Crimea. She did not sign that list. Why she didn't, I don't really know. Maybe she was not invited, or they didn't remember about her at that time, but I'm pretty sure she would have signed it if she had an opportunity. But you're right, she visited that. She visited invaded Russian occupied Donetsk, and she took photos with all these installed authorities and took a photo with her flag and even gave them money publicly as sign of support for them. And after that, still, and those people, remember, they are actually wanted for the downing of the Malaysian Boeing MH17.
Exactly, they killed almost 300 people over Ukraine, and still she shook their hands, and she was pictured holding the flag of these people.
Yes. So the hundreds of innocent people, including I think something like 80 children, were killed in that flight. That was a horrifying tragedy. And she supported those people. She shook hands with them, and she was still embraced everywhere. Even today, she still continues to enjoy this fame in Europe. And there was one particular festival in Germany, in Wiesbaden, Germany, which is, to me, really something beyond absurd. Wiesbaden May Festival. It's a famous festival that happens every year in May. And this year they announced that they will dedicate the festival to the victims of the authoritarian regimes, that includes the Putin's regime. So that's wonderful. And they chose for their program, they chose to perform Nabucco by Verdi, which is, first of all, a story of the Jews fighting for their freedom against the Babylonians, from the Bible, the biblical story, famous story. And also that opera was like an anthem for the Italians who fought for their freedom in the 19th century. And the chorus Va Pensiero from that opera is like a spiritual anthem of Italy, of Italian movement for independence. So everything sounds great so far, right? And then they invite Anna Netrebko one of the main apologists of Putin, who is often singing in Kremlin, receiving awards from him, pictures with him many times, advocates for his policies, asks people to vote for him. You know, in Russia, they have this thing that is called, in Russian, доверенное лицо, right? That someone who, like an artist or a famous person, an athlete, who asks people to vote for Putin, let's say, right? So she was, for many
translation, a trusted person. So she was a trusted person of Vladimir Putin during Putin's electoral campaign.
Exactly, for many years, for many campaigns. Yes, she asked people to vote for him, and then this festival invites her to be the star of that event, which is beyond anyone understanding. They also invited musicians from Kharkiv to be a part of that project, and they refused. Well, they kind of said they can't participate in the same project as Netrebko, and the Wiesbaden festival, of course, chose Netrebko. So the Ukrainians stayed in Kharkiv and did not go there. And you know, it's all very interesting also in the context of conversations about canceling Russian culture now. Now we are talking about this person who's a notorious supporter of Putin, who supported all his policies, and it's still impossible to do anything about her singing in the best Europeans concert halls and opera houses. So she did that performance in Wiesbaden, and there was a big protest. Hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people, came to the opera house with Ukrainian flags, with some other installments and almost like performances. So it was a very, very powerful protest, right? But she still sang, and you know, she keeps singing everywhere. So that question you asked, there is no answer to that. You know, it doesn't seem to have any end.
Well, do you see, please forgive me if this question is naive, but do you see the difference between the perception in the US and in Europe? Like you said that in the US, you have already witnessed some change in the perception. But at the same time, like when Anna Netrebko is singing in Wiesbaden to honor the victims of Putin's regime, that's ridiculous. That's beyond ridiculous. Do you see any differences between the US and, let me say, Germany?
Well, I think here we can talk about some private institutions rather than national-wide differences. I know that Metropolitan Opera said they don't want to collaborate with Netrebko, at least for now. I don't know how long it will last, but for now they're not inviting her anymore. You know, the München Orchestra, that Gergiev was the main conductor of the München Orchestra for several years, and they discontinued their contract with him, and they might have paid him some fee for that, but they did it after February 24, and they gave him a few days to voice his opinion, like if they did not know his opinion that he voiced so many times for so many years, always in support of Putin. So they said we give him like 3 days or something. He didn't say anything, so they discontinued the contract. So he doesn't work in Europe anymore. He doesn't get invited in the United States. But with people like him, again, they have a signature on that letter, so it's kind of hard to go around. There's a physical evidence of their support. With Netrebko, it's a little more slippery slope because she keeps kind of wiggling around, and she wrote something in Instagram first that she doesn't like war in general, and then people said that's not enough, and then she said she wrote something else. It took her about a month to finally say that she disagrees with this invasion, and even though everyone knows that she did it just for the sake of, you know, just leave me alone already and let me continue doing what I'm doing, still they generally accepted it as that she's against the war now. She's now, you know, a fighter against Putin all of a sudden. She sang in Monaco under the Ukrainian flag at some in the end of the concert. So you know, this is a very kind of strange situation when you know the facts, and then there are some ways to go around them and explain certain actions, and things are not what you see, and very hard to deal with this kind of people. You know, when you say, well, she clearly supports this horrible regime, she supports atrocities, and they say, well, did you see on Instagram she wrote this, so she does not support, and there's no way around it.
Can it be like not for such notorious people like Anna Netrebko, who clearly supported not only Putin but the occupation of territories of Ukraine, waving the flag, but like for some people who like maybe signed the letter 8 years ago, never been involved like in other events. Can it be for them like some proposal of like buying out of this misery, like for example donating a part of the profit of the concert for the Ukrainian army? Would people accept this as a true sign of the change in their minds?
Well, honestly, I don't know what other people would say about it. Everyone has their own opinion, right? But I think at this point right now, it's definitely way too late. I mean, we are 1.5 years into the bloodiest, most horrible conflict in decades. And if at this point someone all of a sudden decides that, that was bad and let's somehow turn around, to me, that doesn't look like anything genuine, right? That was pretty obvious long time ago how horrible this whole situation is and how despicable Putin's regime is. So to me, this boat has sailed already. But again, I can tell for the others. So maybe let's say for some big managers from the musical world, if they really feel like they want to invite one of those people and they do make them make a statement somewhere, maybe for them that would be sufficient. I don't know. I would still go protest though if I see them here.
What do people say on the street when you go to protest? When you stay with your slogans in front of the Carnegie Hall and saying "No Gergiev today," then people who bought tickets, who wanted to listen to music, who don't care maybe, or maybe who know it but think that it's no problem for them, when they pass by, how do they address you?
Well, just remember that our protests were all before this full-scale invasion, because after that happened, guys from this list, the personalities from this list, they did not appear in the United States, so we don't have any protests against them anymore. But before that, there are different reactions. There are some people who just generally don't know anything or don't know much about what's happening, and they would be surprised. They would read our flyers. We would always bring flyers, and that was one of the main reasons of these protests, also to let people know what these people stand for and what's going on, to remind them again that there is a war and a big part of Ukraine is occupied by Russia. So people would read, and sometimes they would be very curious about it, and they would say, "Oh, we had no idea. We didn't know things are so bad, or we didn't know these people stand for it." Right? So sometimes they would say, "Oh, if we knew, we would not attend this event. We would not buy tickets." And in pretty much every protest, there was one or two cases when people would say, "Thank you for letting us know. We're not going to go," and they would, in front of us, to destroy the tickets and turn around and leave. Even there were people who joined us and who said, "Now let us know when the next protest is, and we will come and stand next to you, and we will be with you." And of course, there were many other people. There were also people who would say, "What does it have to do with music? We came here to listen to the music. We don't care who says what. We just care about the great art and music, and just don't bother us with all this politics." Right? They usually call this politics. When there's war and people are dying and cities are being destroyed and children are being killed, and they say it's politics, so don't bother with us with that. And of course, also
that is amazing. That is an amazing way. Thank you for pointing that out. That is an amazing way to avoid the basic question about life and death, about bad and evil. Oh, I don't care. It's politics. Thank you for pointing it out. So, what do you tell to these people?
That bothers me a lot, because when does this become not politics, right? Like, let's say today we can watch a movie about some horrible events from the past. It can be about, I don't know, World War II, the Holocaust, any kind of genocide, Armenian genocide, the 9/11, terrorist attacks, anything like that, and we will watch the movies and we'll cry, and it's so touching, and we think, how did this horrible things happen? How did people allow this to happen? Right? This is totally crazy and despicable and heartbreaking, right? But when this similar, I don't want to compare all that. I'm just saying horrible things happening, right? When people are dying and aggression is happening, violence. But it happens today, all of a sudden becomes politics. For many people, they say, "Oh, no, don't bother us with that. That's politics. Let's wait 50 years, and then someone will make a movie about it. We'll go to the movie, we'll cry, we'll read the book, and we'll be very, very upset about it," right? So that's a question that bothers me tremendously for many years, and Well, I have an answer so far that I don't think if you will like. I think that people actually prefer when it's entertainment, right? When they watch movies about that, that's entertainment, right? That's not something they have to take any responsibility for. That's something to spend your time to, just have a glass of wine and drink and think of something, right? So they see that as entertainment. Kind of bothers me to think that those events turned to be something just like entertainment for people now. But then when it happens now, they realize that if it happens now, it has to be stopped, right? And then they have to do something to stop it, and they don't really want to do anything. So then they say, well, it's politics. I would rather just go to listen to this wonderful music or watch that wonderful movie, and I don't have to deal with your politics, so leave me alone, right? So they just shut you off, not to bother with this kind of stuff. And then going back to the concert goers, of course, all these big Russian names who came here, Gergiev and Denis Matsuev, the pianist, and also Vladimir Spivakov, a violinist and conductor, and some others, they always gather a big Russian-speaking audience, who attends their concerts, and sometimes it would be very aggressive to see a protest because they don't like, people kind of denouncing their big idols, big icons. So we had always to notify police to come and protect us, from those very intellectual and aesthetic concert goers who sometimes get inspired so much by the music that they listen to that they want to go fight and punch us and take our flyers and tear them apart and destroy our posters and scream obscene words into us and say how we should go just die and go to the front line instead of being in America and stuff like that. So there were always a lot of that kind of audience fighting with us, basically, and we always had to notify police, and thanks to police, those physical attacks never really went beyond certain point, right? But still, even with the police behind our backs, it still happened, and we had people being spat in the faces and physically harassed and all kind of stuff.
That's terrible. That's terrible. I cannot imagine like being repeatedly exposed to such level of violence and hate and uncomfortable experiences. Thank you for what you're doing. But Pavlo, could you tell me more? We know that in Russian cultural expansion, and you said in the very beginning that Russia weaponizes culture, that in this Russian expansion of culture, they often try to appropriate the cultural gems of colonized cultures. And so that's how like they turn the painters like Ukrainian Qonto or Recipient, who they just like kidnap their paintings from occupied territories to Russia. That's how they did like with intellectuals and with other events. Do you see the same in Russian concerts when the Russians try, or Russia connected organizers try to play music which actually wasn't Russian, but is being presented as if it is a sign of greater Russian culture?
Yes, that is definitely happening. And if you look at some recordings that have been produced, even right now in time of modern Russia, they would sometimes take some couple of Ukrainian composers and include it into a series of the great Russian music, recordings of the great Russian music. In the Soviet Union, of course, they were doing it they would usually say Soviet, right? So by Soviet, the whole world usually understood Russian. And that's a funny sort of game of translation, because when people in the West think about Soviet Union, they right away think that it was only Russia. And for example, one of the very common talking points, even those people who seem to understand what's happening right now, but they trying to play the devil's advocate sometimes, and they say, well, remember, 27 million Russians died in the World War II, so we have to respect that, and we have to know what is Russia's, Russia is afraid of. They don't want another war, and they don't realize that out of the 27 millions, there are millions of other ethnicities, other nationalities. There are millions of Ukrainians who died, for example, that are for some reason not included in this number all of a sudden, right? Millions of Georgians, Belarusians, and all other people who were part of this Soviet Union, often not because of their will, but because they were forced to, right? But yeah, you're right. That happens often. So the cultural appropriation is a tough topic. And you mentioned Quinji and Repin, and honestly, with Repin, I'm not 100% sure that it's the right thing to, right now, to call him Ukrainian, because I don't really know much about his personal views. Did he see himself as Ukrainian or not? I don't know. So forgive me my ignorance here. I know there was a famous painting by Pablo Picasso that wait, was it Picasso? No, sorry. It was famous painting by Degas, which is in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, which depicted a group of dancers wearing the national Ukrainian clothes, and the name was the Russian dancers. But clearly, they wear those flower crowns and those red the dancing boots. That clearly a Ukrainian national costume. So in the Metropolitan Museum, they changed it now into Ukrainian dancers. So that's an interesting sort of rewriting of the original title, because for Picasso saw that, and he, sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Picasso, Degas saw that those dancers, and he was sure it's Russian dancers, and no one really bothered to tell him that they were actually Ukrainian. There is one more situation with Beethoven's piece, variations of the Ukrainian folk song, very famous Ukrainian song, which is called Yichav Kozak za Dunai. Every Ukrainian knows it's an ancient Ukrainian song in Ukrainian language.
That is what in Germany is famous as Schöne Milka.
Schöne Minka, that's right, Schöne Minka. And what happened in Germany, the song somehow, the tune traveled to Germany, right? Or to Vienna. I don't know to which place exactly, because Beethoven lived in Vienna, right? And became popular, and they wrote a German words to it, which is totally normal. That happens all the time. And words in German, of course, have nothing to do with the original Ukrainian words, right? Original Ukrainian words about Ukrainian who is going to Europe to basically make some money. So it's a situation that, especially today, it can be, we can relate to. But in any case, Beethoven heard this melody and wrote a set of variations for flute and piano, really beautiful little piece. And then he, in his title, he said it's a Kleine Russische, Little Russian song, right? Little Russian song. Now, did he know what is Little Russia? Because Little Russia, of course, from that time in Russian, Malorossia translates like Ukraine, right? That's what Russia called Ukraine when they incorporated Ukraine into the big Russian Empire. So he called it a Little Russian song, which again, for the Western people, sounds like some kind of nonsense. Why is it a Little Russian song? Is it a big Russian song? Like, what does it mean?
Is this song little? Like, it's not like Little Russian, it's like Little Song.
Yeah, exactly. So there is this kind of misunderstanding of translation. So later they just drop little because it sounds funny, and they just say it's a Russian song. So everyone for many years knew this piece as the Beethoven's variation in the Russian song. So then I actually did not really know about the existence of this set of variations until after 2014, when I started digging deeper into this question of Ukrainian music and also cultural appropriation. And I found this absolutely beautiful set of variations, and recorded with my friend, the flutist Denis Savelyev, who is a Ukrainian flutist who lives also here in the United States, and posted it on YouTube, and wrote specifically variation on the Ukrainian folk song, which is very similar to what Metropolitan Museum did to the Degas painting that I was talking about, right? And right away, I started getting this comment after comment after comment. Who are you to change Beethoven's original title? This is a Russian song. This is Russian. Doesn't matter that it's actually Ukrainian, has Ukrainian lyrics, and has nothing to do with Russia whatsoever. But Beethoven wrote it Russia, so who are you? There was even a person who, when I had a concert in Spain last year, and she wrote that don't go to this pianist concert because he's such a rabid Ukrainian nationalist. He even dared to take Beethoven's original title and changed it into a different thing because he's such a Russophobic, anti-Russian, whatever. So, it's just kind of funny to watch, even though it's little tiny things, just my YouTube video, how many people are going to watch that. But even there are like dozens and dozens of comments that I erased some of them, but not all of them. I left some just for people to see that, you cannot do that. But now that's became a typical thing to do. People revisit and re-evaluate what exactly happened, and maybe there was a mistake or misunderstanding, and they changed that, like with the Degas painting, like Quinji, as you mentioned, right? that he's a Ukrainian painter, and I hope they finally also do it in music as well, because there are a number of musical works that should be reattributed to Ukraine rather than Russia.
Indeed, and we have now, out of reason which is very sad and tragic, we still have this a huge interest in the West for Ukrainian culture, for Ukrainian literature, for Ukrainian music, for Ukrainian traditions like kitchen and other things. We know that we would have better spared the reason for that, and this terrible war of invasion, of genocide. But now what is happening, and I hope that the West will step by step discover the soul of Ukraine and the content of Ukrainian culture. But do you see that this development, that Ukrainian music, Ukrainian art is enjoying more attention, or do you think that it is more like a temporary rise of interest because of the events?
It's hard to predict what will happen in the future, and first and foremost, I just hope this war ends as soon as possible, and then after it ends, we'll see how everything else plays out, right? But right now, that's what concerns me the most. But there is certainly more interest to Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian music, and first of all, that more interest from the Ukrainians themselves. That was lacking for some time, because Ukrainian culture was suppressed back in this Soviet Union. Even when I studied in the 19th in the music school in independent Ukraine, I studied in the Kiev's premier music school, the best one in the city, in the capital, and I had this class of Ukrainian history, musical history, Ukrainian musical literature for many years, and there are some names that I'm discovering right now that I haven't heard about during that class. So that just tells you how disbalanced and how wrong this whole perception was of even from the Ukrainians themselves, from professionals. Imagine if you are specializing, let's say, German literature, and suddenly you have PhD in it, and you are 30 plus years old, and suddenly you discover there is Schiller, let's say. That's unimaginable, right? But that's our reality. That's what happened to us, unfortunately, and it's not really our fault as much as just because of systematic destruction and suppression of Ukrainian culture for decades, and some of the names were just completely erased and forgotten, and the music was not performed and not published. And right now, I see that more and more Ukrainian musicians, and not musicians, probably it's in all areas, right? But I see, since I'm a musician, I see many Ukrainian musicians discovering and digging out and finding in some archives and libraries music by these composers who did not know, even professionals, did not know the music, did not know the names, and start playing them. And I mean, that's the start. Without it, we can't really expect anyone in the world to have interest in Ukrainian culture. So first of all, we have to discover it for ourselves and present it to the world, and I'm sure that then at some point it will find its own place in like how people know Italian music and Spanish music and American music and music from different countries, and at some point there probably will be enough interest and knowledge of Ukrainian music as well.
And this through discovery, it can go up to very standard things which accompany us on daily life, like Carol of Bells is being composed originally by Ukrainian composer Leontovich. And that is what many know, of course, especially now during the war. But that is not the first thing which you think when on Christmas dies, you hear the Carol of Bells in a shop or in a movie, of course. So thank you very much for this inspiring interview. It was Pavlo Gintov. He's a classic pianist who works and lives in New Jersey, the US, and who is a champion of Ukrainian fight for reclaiming the cultural space and explaining the real content, the real issue of the Ukrainian fight for its cultural existence and for its physical existence. Thank you for having been with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, to like, to share, to comment. Thank you, Pavlo, for your time.
Thank you for having me.